Hey, this is Aubrey.
This is Marky Mark Markellis.
And this is your boy Joey, and we are from the So Wizard podcast telling you, please don't listen to Pint of Comics. Find something else to do, like giving your goldfish a bath, or washing your hair, or maybe listening to So Wizard podcast.
F dem hoes.
Hi there, I'm Lloyd.
And I'm John, and we're from Pint of Comics. As we dive into your favorite pop culture topics, we may just
Occasionally
use language that could be considered
globaloney.
what? No, I mean,
Foul.
exactly. Offensive.
No doubt. Crass.
You bet your ass.
Sophisticated.
What? No. Anyways, you get it by now. It's mostly just
Gutter talk.
And one more thing. Watch out for spoilers. Sometimes we drop them like trousers. You've been warned.
Listen in.
All right, we're back with another episode of The Pint. Of course, you've got me, John, and over the Zoom lines up in lovely Farmington, Connecticut. Is it Farmington or West Hartford? Where are you again?
I'm in Farmington.
Farmington, okay.
Yeah, I live in the woods. I've got bobcats and bear and deer and fox and every other creature you can think of.
Nice. We got the manster out there in the woods with the monsters. Have you ever encountered a bobcat, manster? Have you ever
yes,
had to...
in our not face to face, but definitely in our yard where I decided to go inside.
Yeah, good choice.
There was a bear literally right in our back porch. He was chasing our cat.
And apparently your cat made it, I hope.
Yeah, the cat's a little faster, so he did get away.
I don't know. Full speed running bear, I heard they can get up there 30, 40 miles an hour. So
Can they? Oh, wow. Well, maybe it was just, it was the area.
Can I be honest? That's a bullshit fact. I have no clue. I have no clue how fast bears can run. I'm thinking to myself, though, a bear on all fours, 800 pounds, full force, pistons pumping. Yeah, it's probably 70, 80 miles an hour. Anyways.
Yeah, maybe the bear from The Revenant.
Yeah, I never saw that. I got to check that out.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those one of our guests, who's a movie snob, by the way, just gave me the what the fuck's your problem look.
Hey, you know what I miss?
What do you miss, Lloyd?
I really miss going to the damn movie theater. I'm sick of not being able to go out, not going to the movies. When's it ever going to come back?
Oh, you mean because of the pandemic we're suffering through right now, and the fact that suddenly has become an issue where you can't really do what you want to do, and movie theaters are now facing the hardest times they've ever faced in their, 60, 70, 80-year history. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yep.
If this was episode of The Pint was on NBC's in the 90s, this would be a very special episode of The Pint. They would introduce the episode of Cheers beforehand, what they'd always used to do, where they'd say, on this week's Cheers, Sam and Diane get into some shenanigans. And then it would go like this. It would go, and then on a special Pint of Comics.
And you get that special word coming in, it's spinning around in a circle.
Yep. John and Lloyd talk about movie theaters and whether they're going to make it through the pandemic. And we are. That's what we're going to talk about real quick tonight. We're going to do a little bit of a more focused, serious episode. Well, not serious, but a more focused episode on something in particular. And with us are our guests from Forgotten Entertainment. These two guys particularly host a really awesome podcast, Yet Another MCU podcast. Now, I always slow down, even though I listen to this show all the time. I slow down with the name because there's another local podcast that I listen to that I'm friendly with called Not Another Nerdy Podcast.
Yes.
And their names are close enough that I feel like I'm going to throw the wrong words in there.
So what I call this podcast?
What do you call it?
Personally, just in my mind, I call it Yam Cup.
Yam Cup?
Yeah,
they call it Yamp. They call it Yamp. Yeah.
Well, I call it Yam Cup.
So the guys from Yamp, Pat and Mike Field, are here with us. You might know Field from previous episodes of The Pint where we discussed, we talked about Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So he's the guy that a lot of you people out there are like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Because
that's incorrect.
he championed it. We talked with him about Scalped, the awesome Vertigo comic series. And a while back, we did a couple of PMIs with him and Mike Butler, his other podcasting partner from another great show, Forgotten Cinema. We talked about Midnight Madness. That was his episode. And then on the on Mike's episode, we talked about Phantom Menace, but we don't refer to that here. And Pat
Try to forget that one.
Pat is a first-time guest. Pat, what's going on? How are you doing, man?
Not much. Thank you for welcoming me to a very special episode.
Yes.
I really appreciate that. I've never been on one of these before, so I'm happy to be here and doing pretty well.
It's almost like your episode. This is the episode where we introduce like a new character that's going to take over for another character. Like after this episode, just so you guys know, after this episode, Pint Comics is now me and Pat. And if you ever ask about what happened to Lloyd, we're never going to talk about it. It's going to be like, it'll be like one of those episodes where an actor changes when a little kid actor went from being 3 to like 7 immediately in the next season. That's what this episode is. It's a setup episode.
The role of Philip Spaulding is now being played by Patrick Whalen.
Yes, the role of Manster is now Patrick Whalen.
Nice.
So the reason we brought you guys on is specifically Field because you are you work in the movie theater industry, and this is being recorded in 2020. And everybody out there, we don't have to explain what's going on, so we're going to skip all that stuff. But we know the end result is that movie theaters are having a really hard time right now. And I kind of wanted to get both of your feelings because part of the Forgotten Entertainment thing is you guys do these great blog posts, and you did one not too long ago. I don't remember if it was Pat and Field or Pat and Butler, but you guys did one about kind of this subject about like where movie theaters are pointing. So let me start with Field and ask you, has there ever been a point in your, and I know you've worked at theaters for like 25 years, right?
Since 1993.
1993. All right. So has there ever been a point in your 25 years of working in theaters that it's even come remotely close to being a question of whether you thought like your theater or theaters were going to be closing at any point? I get it. I know the pandemic is really forcing this, but have you seen anything close to this? Was there ever a couple of years that the sales or the theater rentals or whatever were down so far that it was causing nerves in the industry, or is this like just out of left field?
Well, this is not. I've never experienced something that's basically throughout the industry. I've worked in buildings where they were closing them up because there was a sale happening, or the theater just was shuttering some of their theaters. So I've been in that. I've been in buildings where they've closed just because that's just what the business decided, but it wasn't out of any kind of industry wide issue in terms of like what we're dealing with now. So no, nothing. I've never experienced anything. I've never had to shut down. Never had to shut down, get laid off, get sent home, and then always kind of get updates from my former boss, who still was my boss because they brought us all back, about when we were going to open. So never had that happen. So that was a first. Okay,
so you were laid off for the first like several months of this year. I'm assuming March to maybe summertime, right?
Yeah, we found out when the quarantine happened in terms of in Connecticut where we are. It was a Monday. And it was like, you close at 6, you're done. And that was
right.
We had to close that night. And then that following Friday or Saturday, everyone had to get let go. They laid off everybody. And then it was just, I had to learn how to collect unemployment, all that stuff. You had to learn all that not good stuff that you never had to deal with before. And they didn't come back until it was they were going to come back at some point. I want to say July or something, and they're all ready to go. And then I got pushed back again. And I think we opened in August or September or something like that, maybe August. And we were still open, but nothing's going on. Yeah.
And to kind of clarify for people listening, we live in Connecticut. We're all in Connecticut. But in places like, right, am I correct? New York, California, theaters still never reopen, right?
No, they're not open. Especially like LA and New York. And that was the big holdup in terms of movies coming out, like new content coming out. They were waiting for the amount of screens to be increased so that they have a reason to release content. But it's never studios and film. It's never based on how many theaters are open. It's always based on how many screens are open.
Right.
So it doesn't matter if 404 screen theaters are open. That's not enough. So
I'm going to ask Pat now, because Pat doesn't work in the theater. He doesn't have a theater job. But are you the kind of guy that goes to the movies quite a bit? Or were you the kind of guy that, like me personally, I grew up and I was an avid moviegoer. But in the last few years of my life, it's been less and less. It's been more of it's got to drive me to the movie theaters to go see it. And part of that is because of, I think we all know about this Field more than others. the absolute shitbag experience of going to the theaters with other people who suck. All right. And I've kind of like let go a lot of the movie theater experience. But Pat, are you a guy that goes a lot or went a lot in pre-COVID times?
As far as my movie going experience, I'd say maybe nowadays it's 10, 12 movies a year. So maybe one a month, whatever that big one, the big blockbuster is of the month. In years past, it was a lot more. As I've gotten older, as the movie theater experience has changed, it's certainly decreased a bit. Not a bit, a lot. I was talking to Mike a couple of weeks ago, and I said to him, I want to get back to the days where we could get that $12 ticket. I don't need the Barca Lounger to sit in. I just want a movie. I want a big screen. I want to go over to get a popcorn and a soda for $25, watch a 2-hour movie. And I know that's absurd in today's age with how it is, but I think they got away from, movie theaters, in an effort to replicate the home life, got away from what made movie theaters special. And that was the sticky floors, the popcorn all over the place, the big screen. You're there for a couple hours and they shut all the lights off. Instead, they were trying to make it as comfortable as possible. Go get the beer from the bar first, come on in, stay there for a couple hours. It to me doesn't help. And that's what I wanted to get everybody's take on too, is how you guys felt about that change.
Yeah, I want to say, first of all, I think it's funny that the guy that says that is easily the youngest guy on this podcast, because he's talking about a movie theater experience that we all experienced growing up. And I get it. I get that the Barca Loungers and all that is newer, but I would still think that maybe more of Pat's movie experience would be in the more comfortable range of the last 15 or so years with theaters, but he's going old school. Lloyd, how do you feel about that? What is it? You brought up at the beginning, and you did it in a humorous way to get us to our guests. But do you really miss the movie going experience, or are you one of these people? I know people very well that say to me, "Fuck it, I don't care. I've got a 70-inch TV. I've got my fridge. I can eat whatever I want without the worries of some jerk like Field telling me not to eat my Taco Bell here."
Damn right.
And I'm
outside
just
food.
So, Lloyd, was that an experience that you relished, and do you miss that?
Yeah, I wasn't going to 5 movies a month or anything, but like what Pat said, one a month, maybe 10 or 12 a year, try to hit the big ones. Of course, I had, I don't know, whatever theater it is, some kind of rewards thing. So, I would get a $5 Tuesday, stuff like that, which kept me going to the movies. I think there was a time, maybe in the last 10 years or so, that I really wasn't going as much as I was in the more recent, 2 or 3 years. So they've really been working a lot on getting people back into the theaters. And I did, although I tend to fall asleep from time to time.
No, not you.
I did like those loungers. We even have one in West Hartford where they, you ring the little buzzer and they come and serve you food and drinks. That was pretty great. And I do have a confession. I did get out to a movie. I did go to the Fathom events. What is it? 40th anniversary of The Shining this year.
Mm-hmm.
I bundled up. I must have wore 5 layers of clothes. I wore 2 masks and a hood, and I got a seat way in the back of the theater, way in the corner, and stayed as far away as I could from everybody, and really enjoyed watching The Shining.
And you know that you watched a satellite downloaded movie on a DVR. You did not watch any kind of film.
Okay, whatever it was big.
Well, but you know what though? That's a good
It
point.
was in the theater.
That's a good point though. Lloyd, despite the idea that he didn't go see it in 35 mil or anything, because I've done Fathom events. I did Alien last year, the 40th anniversary, and I've got the big Alien set right here. I could just throw that on my big screen. But he just spoke to it kind of inadvertently, to the fact that he wanted the theater experience. He wanted to see The Shining on a how big are theater screens, Mike? What is the size?
Oh, geez, I don't know. They differ. I mean, they do differ by seat size. So our Fathom event theater is 144 seats. That's with the loungers now, because it used to be 293. But when you put the loungers in, it cuts half the seats down. It's based upon seat size.
This particular one was an IMAX screen up in Manchester.
Well, the IMAX might not be. That might be a legit file.
Yeah,
That what something Phil just said brings up a really great, I guess, point to all of this, is that so a few years ago when theaters started to get these giant chairs that Pat mentioned and the comfort factor went up, you're saying that one theater dropped over half of its seat capacity to add these big seats in.
Yeah.
Now, were these theaters, without breaking out the numbers and getting, Pint of Comics sued by the chain that you work for, were these theaters seeing that much of a drastic dip in audience going that they felt that was okay? Or did the price of the tickets go up enough where they said it doesn't matter? Because to me, it seems like if you got 293 seats and it's a Friday night and Avengers 15 comes out, and let's say the tickets are 15 a piece, this is simple math. You're going to sell out on a Friday night in 2015, let's say.
Yeah. Well,
but now you're saying there's 144 seats. Does this factor into, I guess what I'm trying to ask is was this theaters preemptively shooting themselves in the foot, or am I looking too hard into that?
No, this was theaters. I've said that, I keep saying this, not here, but like in general, that the theater were on a downward trend to begin with before the pandemic. The theaters were not, the reason why they did the loungers was obviously to compete with home, but also people weren't coming. I tell you, oh, hey, this movie sold out. And you're like, wow, it did really good. But then I tell you, well, it's in a 60-seat theater. That's our smallest theater, 60 seats. And so, yeah, sure, that sells out, but it's only 60 people. So obviously that creates a demand. But the theaters have always been going down. The pandemic has only just hastened that. This is where we are now is where we were going to end up in 10 years in terms of the theater struggling. When you do not control your own content, and you do not own the content that's coming in, and you're beholden to content creators and beholden to studios, don't be surprised when the consumers want it somewhere else and they don't want it at the theater. Theaters, they never go down in price. They always go. I tell people who always come into the theater that complain, oh my God, it's so expensive. And I go, we're not going down.
Yeah.
We're never going down.
Yeah.
I get it. It's expensive, but we're not going back down. We're going up, up, up. So
I sell automotive parts for a living, and batteries in particular. People are like, "Man, this is so expensive." I'm like, "Buy it now. Come back in 2 weeks, and it might be $8 more.
Yeah.
It is. You're not going to walk in here and find it $20 less anytime soon." So
yeah. So and to the point with the IMAX. So with the IMAX theaters, they are not allowed to swap those seats out for loungers. So IMAX leases that to the theaters. The theaters pay licensing fee or leasing fee to IMAX. So if you said to the IMAX, hey, we want to put in these Barca loungers, you're going to lose 120 seats. IMAX goes, no, that's not happening. You could put in nicer seats, but we want to keep our seat count. So the IMAX theater doesn't go down in terms of seat count. So the IMAX theater usually stays the same. The IMAX theater right now that we have is like 300 seats plus. It doesn't sell out. So it doesn't, do anything.
My next question, and I'm going to kind of go to Pat and Lloyd on this. We're in a point where let's just round it off and say 10 months into this pandemic, right? And as of recording right now, we're in a point where it's getting bad again, or it is bad. It's as bad as it's been at the worst point early in the year, right? What is it about the theater experience where, Field kind of humorously, but it was at the same time not funny, a couple of weeks ago put up on like his Instagram a Friday night at his theater, and he just took a picture of the lobby. And now you might say, well, okay, this could be between, every show. No, there's always going to be people in a lobby at a theater buying popcorn. The films are staggered. It was dead empty. He even added the cute little tumbleweeds, right?
Tumbleweed, yeah.
So Pat, what is it about the theater going experience that isn't translating to the rest of the, and I say this lightly, kind of the bravado kind of dicky nature that a lot of us have? Like, my store, I work a retail job. I don't get less people in every day. Restaurants that are open or have the ability to open, people are going in left and right. Why are people afraid to go to a movie theater? And like, why are they suffering in particular when you can go look at like the pizza place that might be open and there's people walking in and out of it, or the Starbucks, people in and out, or the Target, people are, a good example, I drove by my Walmart today and there was thousands of people in the parking lot. What is it with the theater experience that people are avoiding this on purpose?
I think there's a couple of things. One, you pointed it out, for the retail, for the restaurants, it's a little bit more transitory in nature. So people can come in and leave within, 5-10 minutes if they really wanted to. For the theater, you have this idea of being trapped in a room next to people. We brought it up at the top of the show that they might not be the best people to have an experience with, to put it mildly. Sometimes you got a lot of people complaining. You have babies, you have sick kids, you have people screaming and yelling and everything. And if you feel like getting trapped in a room with that group for 2 hours during this pandemic in a closed, it's a closed door, there's limited ventilation, you're stuck there. And I think people are a little bit hesitant to do that. But more importantly, there's so much cheaper content out there right now. And the cheaper content comes in this, I pay $18 a month for Netflix. If I go to a movie, one movie for 2 hours or 2.5 hours, I'm paying 30, between the ticket, between whether it's parking, it's the snacks, it's everything. You could get 100 movies a month for less than the price of one. So, yes, to one degree, it's that, being, like I said, being trapped in a room, but to the other degree, it's really about the affordability of the content and the ease of this, the ease of getting to that content, where I could press the button on my remote and get Netflix, or I press the other button and I get Hulu, and it's right there, and I don't have to go anywhere for it.
Lloyd, you had said that you went, and you kind of said apologetically, like we were going to judge you. I honestly, I'm judging you at all times, so
that's right.
It did add into it, and I should be. I should be, and I will correct your behavior later. But for now, so you deemed it okay, but you did mention.
Yeah. So actually, I do have something to say about this, and I'm glad you mentioned restaurants. First of all, I mean, Pat's definitely right. People can sit at home and watch all kinds of great movies streaming, Netflix, and every other streaming thing out there. And they're not going to movie theaters. And I would, if I could even just say anything that would convince just one person, that would be great. So when I did go to the movie, this place is right next to a steakhouse. Okay, they pretty much butt up against each other, the parking lots. The steakhouse parking lot was so jam-packed with cars. And the big movie theater parking lot, which has 16 theaters in it, maybe 10% of the amount of cars, if that, spread out over 20 theaters, So I felt way safer in a movie theater, really big room. I'm not next to anybody. Nobody's next to me. Nobody's breathing on me.
And we should mention that we didn't say that, is that theaters have made the effort to, block off every few seats. And so, I mean, I want to be fair. I mean, people know that, but I want to be fair that they're not expecting you to go in there and sit next to, some guy coughing all over you. They have made the effort to do that too.
So if you're in a movie theater and you buy one seat, you're in essence buying 5 seats. You buy your seat and the 2 seats to either side of you.
I'm a little concerned, and I do want to ask Field real quick and get back to you, Lloyd. When I said that safety thing, Field kind of gave me a look like, eh. So I'm gonna let Lloyd finish, but I want to table that. So Lloyd, I'm sorry, Lloyd, keep going, and we're gonna go right to Field afterwards to get the insider info on if maybe we're all being duped by the movie theaters.
So people, and then when you do go on there and click, you're not clicking next to anybody, and you're counting seats, and you're like, well, if I pick this seat and then this guy over here has a seat, we each got 2 to the side of us, there's still 2 or 3 more in the middle. So I'm telling you, nobody's sitting next to anybody else, okay? And another thing about why people aren't doing this, I mean, people have to eat, right? People have to eat every single day, 6 times a day, however much you like to eat. People are sick of cooking. People don't want to stay home and cook anymore. They need to go out and get their food somewhere else, and that's more important than watching a movie.
So I'm going to jump down to Mike and say, Mike, are you going to tell me, are you actively, do you have a bucket of COVID and you're painting the seats with it? What's happening there?
No. So a friend of mine who I used to work with when we used to be employees, when we were talking, when this first started, he made the comment to me, which makes complete sense to me. He was like, can you imagine 16-year-old, 18-year-old me and you doing all this stuff, having to spray down everything and having to make sure, and I was like, make sure everything was done right and sanitize everything. I was like, no, I mean, this is not, I mean, I know what we do at our place. Yes, we spray, relax everybody. But you're fooling yourself if you think that every single theater taking this as seriously as some theater, as everyone else. 18-year-old me could care less about doing any kind of work like that. Like I always tell people that, I was a terrible employee. I screwed around, I goofed off there. I could tell you stories that I will not tell on air that we used to do. So, but obviously when I became manager, I grew up a little bit. Yeah, no, I couldn't picture 17-year-old me doing any of the stuff that they have them doing now. So I wouldn't be surprised if people aren't doing it out there.
All right, I'm going to get over to Pat again, and because Pat brought up Netflix and brought up the streaming options. So we are at the point now where just the other day, last week, I think it was, Warner Brothers' complete slate of movies for next year has been announced as going to theaters on same day, but also releasing on HBO Max. This is unprecedented. Obviously, in the last year of COVID, we had a few instances where this happened, but like Mulan came out on Disney Plus, but you had to pay an extra $30 for that. You know, they did like some stuff like that. But now we're getting to a point where if you have a subscription service, you now have the choice of, do I want it? Now you're literally at, it's the big screen experience. That's the actual line that they're drawing this in. Do you care enough that you could on Christmas Day sit down and watch Wonder Woman 1984 at home, or do you need to see Gal Gadot on a 18,000 foot screen? Do you think that this is something that even if theaters and COVID ends and vaccines start coming out, do you think that these companies can ever recover from making this precedent? Like in 2 years, let's say COVID, let's hope COVID is gone and the economy is getting better and theaters are opening up again. Do you think people are going to be able to say, well, Warner Brothers, we're not doing that on HBO Max this year. COVID's over. Do you think that's viable going forward, or do you think that it's the way it is now?
That's a good question. I think it depends on what the rest of the industry does. So Warner Brothers, well, technically Universal, Comcast fired the first shot. They cut the streaming, the video on demand window down from when it could be released VOD versus in theaters. And then Warner Brothers came and basically took a bazooka to that and said, forget all that, we're going to do this. I think it depends, and it's weird that we're having this conversation today. It's December 9th. Tomorrow, Disney's going to make their big announcements. I think it really depends on what Disney does. And if Disney says Black Widow is coming to Disney Plus on January 15th, then it's over. If Disney decides to go streaming video on demand same day as in theaters, there's going to be a lot of empty real estate for a long time. And it really, they're going to set the stage. It's Warner Brothers and Disney are the two biggest players out there. Warner Brothers already did what they did. And it comes down to what Disney does. Now, if we get 2-3 years in the future, like you say, with the vaccine, you're still going to need these blockbusters to drive people. And, I don't know if it's going to be Avatar 2 and maybe another form of 3D or some other gimmick that gets people back into the theater that is the driving force behind it. But it's going to be hard coming back from this if Disney goes with it too. If they say, we're just committed, we're going to hold all our stuff until we could get back into the theater, then there's a little bit more of a shot. But for right now, it's going to be tough.
Pat, have you, I don't know if we actually mentioned this or not, have you gone to theaters in the COVID times?
I have not. There's nothing really. I know we had talked about Tenet off air. Didn't get a chance to go see that one. But other than that, there wasn't much I wanted to actively go see and go to a theater for.
Okay, so I guess a better question is if something did come out, like you're obviously an MCU guy, comic book guy, let's say, Black Widow came out today. Are you going to the theater for that?
Are you going to see Wonder Woman Christmas?
No, I'm the wrong person to ask about Wonder Woman. I thought
for God's
Wonder
sakes.
Woman was overrated.
Well, that's why I'm asking about Black Widow. Okay,
Yeah,
or let's just say Avengers 5 comes out tomorrow.
No, if Black Widow came out tomorrow, probably not. If Black Widow came out in July, yes, I would have been in that theater. But that was at a time when the pandemic was lessening to a degree.
Right.
But at the stage that it's at right now, if it comes out tomorrow, if it comes out in January, I'll wait till it's on VOD.
Okay. So I guess what I was trying to get to with that, and that's a good answer. But so let's say we get to, post-COVID times, and now we have kind of gotten the choice, and they stick with it, and they say, okay, Disney Plus is going to show you Black Widow, but you also go and see it on the giant screen. What do you do? I'm going to ask each one of you. So any movie, any big movie, Star Wars 26, whatever the big movie is that you would want to see on a big screen, day of, but you could also go and see it in the theater. What are you doing, Pat?
Theater.
All right. Field, what are you doing?
I'm home.
You're home. And Lloyd, what are you doing?
Yeah, I think theater.
I think I'm right in the middle. Like, I feel like I'm in the middle of, like, you guys all answered pretty quickly. I feel like I want the answer to be theater, but I also feel like, why when it's home? You know what I mean?
Here's the thing too. I know that we all love the theater and it's so magical. But these Black Widow, Wonder Woman, these tentpole movies are
like fast food, McDonald's, Burger King. They're nothing memorable. I mean,
Well, okay, so
you know
so
what I mean?
take something. Take something to you that personally would be memorable. Like
I had this conversation with my buddy who's a cinematographer. He's actually a cinematographer on The Flight Attendant on HBO Max for everyone out there. I said, like, I remember the theater experience that I always remember are the ones where I go to like an art house theater and I see a movie that's out that's not going to be out anywhere else. It's only in this one location for 1 week, and I want to see the movie because it's got a director I like. And then it's going to go straight. I'm not going to see it again for another couple months. Or when I saw the road show for Hateful Eight at the cinema that was playing in the New Rochelle, like when I have to travel to a theater outside of my circle, I got to drive hour and a half, 45 minutes. When I saw The Irishman for the non-cast at the Wallingford Theater, like those are the events. Those are the movies that I always remember. You know, obviously when I was younger growing up, I was in the theater for Total Recall with Schwarzenegger, and we were cheering when he was killing all his friends. You know, I remember going to see Disturbing Behavior in downtown New York when I lived there for a couple months, and it was just raucous and it was fantastic. Like those are the things I remember. But like now, those experiences are far and few between in the big giant multiplexes. So I don't think there's anything magical about going into a 16-screen Cineplex where it's playing on 6 screens, and I'm picking between the 330, the 340, or the 350 time, and we're all cramming ourselves in there, and it's not as magical as, I guess, for me as maybe it is for some other people, maybe because I'm older now. But it's the movies that I have to go seek out that I enjoy the most. And I'm sorry, but like Black Widow and these tent poles aren't them. Avatar 2 is not going to be them for me.
right.
You know what I mean? It's like it's the anticipation's great, but then you always walk out of the theater going, okay, what's next?
But is your answer like for those type of movies? Yes, I'm going to go to the theater for it. You know what I mean? Like in terms of like you still want to, like, let's say you could have that experience of let's say some art house film, and it's going to be at some theater you'd have to travel to, and it's safe, we're in a safe time and everything, but you also have the option that it also came out on DVD that same week and you have access to it.
It depends on if a friend's going with me. Hey, I wanted to.
Right.
You want to hang out tonight? Yeah, let's go. Because like when I was younger, when a night out for me is, hey, let's go watch it. Let's hang out at the house and watch a double feature, or let's go to a movie theater and watch a movie. It wasn't let's hang out at the bar. So those are like that's the experience I remember. Yeah, and if my buddy was like, hey, I wanted to see this movie, you want to come with? Yeah, I'm there. So that's fine. But just to kind of like, hey, what are we doing this weekend? Let's go to the movies. That's not really. I don't know. I just don't think that's not going to drive me out there. And
Okay.
I like stories, and if the story is readily available to watch at home and with 3 kids and kind of like, dealing with a house full of kids and dogs and animals, it's just a lot easier to stay home and watch it. And I have a 65-inch screen TV. I've got the sound system. That's the whole reason I got that. So I could enjoy that experience at home. I mean, I understand the magic of cinema, but I just, the content
Funny
is not
coming
as
from a theater guy.
No, I get it. Well, the content, because I'm not, you know what it is though. If I worked at like an art house theater, I probably would be more like, I love that. I love working there. But I'm at a corporation multiplex where it's just, I mean, I get the emails from corporate. I get all that behind the scenes stuff, and it's not magical.
We think of the magical theater experience, and for Field, that means he has to stop some like 22-year-old girl from like giving a guy a blowjob in the back. That's just awkward. Like that kind of takes away from it. When your whole night consists of stopping for people from pulling like small pizzas out of their jackets,
yep.
and stopping like finger banging from happening. I assume it's got to be a little rough, but
it's annoying.
Hey, she was legal.
Yeah. Hey, legal's fine. Just don't do it in my theater. I guess. Do you guys think, so we talked about our personal preferences, and we talked about what's happening, and we talked about all that stuff. I think it's been a good conversation. Do you guys think, and I'll start with Lloyd this time, and then I'll go around to Mike and then to Pat, our theater's dead? Like straight up, our theater's dead. Are they going to be able to recover from this?
Wow. I kind of think they are. I do.
So you don't see.
I hope they recover. I would certainly like to see that. But the way it's looking now, I don't see it happening.
All right. Mike?
I think they're dead the way we know them, just like arcades. Just like arcades went, and how they, you don't see, how they kind of shifted, and obviously the arcades went to a ticket-based system, and they're all like, little
ticket games and stuff like that, and there's not as many. I think you're going to have the giant multiplexes. They're not. It's just not going to be the same. And I think that once we return to some kind of quote unquote normal, the audience won't be there as big as it used to be. And I think you'll start seeing theaters closed. I think you'll start seeing layoffs. Not all the time. They'll still be, they may come back eventually.
They got to come up with a good slogan and sticker. It says our comeback will be better than our. What was that?
Yeah.
Comic slogan.
Yeah, the comic slogan. What the hell did it say?
Our comeback will be bigger than our
setback or something
like that.
Yeah.
Many years ago, James Cameron had mentioned that he envisioned theaters going the way of Broadway shows, where you'd be super expensive to go see a hot ticket item, a special event, and the prices would match that. And you know what? I think he was right. I think that's where we're headed.
I do want to point out too that I'm glad I caught the word on the second time, because when you said theaters are dead like arcades, I thought you said our kids, and I'm like,
no.
I'm like, wow. I'm like, he's getting heavy.
Cow.
Like, is he going to start talking about the generation of kids and like, you know why our theaters are dead? Because these fucking kids, these millennials.
You got 2 hours for my dissertation.
Okay, arcades. All right, I feel better. And you're right. We're of an age, I think particularly Field and I, because we've talked about this before, we're the same age. I think our generation has seen more things come and go than a lot of generations. Now, I know that might sound a little bit self-serving because, but like in terms of technology and stuff like that, we've seen like how many forms of home video, how many forms of music to listen to. We've been through all of it, and Lloyd has too. I guess I mean that more along the edge of like where things started. Like when Lloyd was a kid, it was more like records. No, I mean, it was
records.
It was records. And then it moved into, when I was a kid, records were still there, but there was tapes and, you started moving to CDs.
Yeah.
Now,
I had an album collection.
Yeah. I bet you Pat has never owned a cassette, or maybe one. Did you have one?
No, I owned a bunch of them. My first car had a cassette player in it. And so I remember back when FYE would sell cassettes along the back wall, so I picked those up.
What about 8-tracks?
No, I don't know what an 8-track is.
He doesn't even know what an 8-track is.
Yeah, we had that.
If an 8-track made that sound when it would change tracks, Pat would know what it was. He would jump under a table.
The 8-tracks are what my parents had in their car.
Pat's probably towards the tail end. We're probably right smack in the middle, but Pat's towards the tail end of the generation that will know what analog and digital was both like. Eventually, the people before Pat, my kids probably will only know what digital's like. So we're of the few generations where we know what both are like. And we've had to learn to go from analog to digital, which I think makes us cooler, but
Right.
All right.
Probably
Pat,
had the round circular dial on the telephones too.
Yeah, the rotary. Yeah, I can't. It baffles me when people don't know what is this. Like, you can't figure this out. It's not that hard.
Yeah. Just
one of those two.
That's a finger hole.
Yeah.
All right, Pat. We talked a lot. I think I know where you're going with this, with your statement of a lot of open real estate earlier. But what do you think?
I'm right there with Field. As we know them, they're dead. To his point about the arcades, we've seen the resurgence with things like Dave and Buster's. And not to knock Dave and Buster's, but again, it's a lot of gimmicks. It's a lot of stuff to kind of get you in the door, but without any real consistency. And it's a big ticket. It's an expensive night out. And I think especially as we head into another recession, that's going to be even more challenging to make it work. The saving grace may be those Oscar films that need to be shown in the theater in order to qualify, if that still remains a qualification. But it's going to be limited runs. You do it kind of like, the Michael Jordan documentary. You're in one or two for a week, and then you're out. And so there's a limited expense on the distribution, but they're still in the theater just to qualify, I say, in air quotes. So, yeah, I think there's got to be a lot of changes. It's going to be interesting where they go, but as we know it, I think they're effectively dead.
All right, we're going to leave it at that. Pat just put the stake right in the heart of the theaters.
Yeah, he sure did.
He killed him.
He's the Van Helsing.
Yeah, he's the.
Oh no, that's a terrible movie.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of great movies with Van Helsing in it prior to the Hugh Jackman shitfest known as Van Helsing. So yeah, that's been Pint of Comics for this week. I just thought it was interesting, and I thought when we were talking to these guys that it might be a cool, quick topic to talk about. We were talking to these guys in particular because they have an awesome endeavor called Forgotten Entertainment, which Lloyd and I will be doing something with pretty soon. So we were fleshing that out. It is in the podcast realm, and if you listen to the Pint, you're going to now have a second podcast for a while coming at some point in 2021 to add to your subscriptions. And as always, I'm not going to expect Lloyd. Do you have all the Pint of Comics stuff out there, Lloyd, or no?
I could rattle it off.
All right, rattle it off, Lloyd.
Yeah, you got the website, pintofcomics.com. You can listen to your podcast there. You can read some articles. You can get links to the Twitter and all that stuff. So Twitter, it's at Pint of Comics, and on Facebook, right, at Pint of Comics.
Yep.
And on the
Instagram.
Instagram. Yeah, you know what? I do need it in front of me.
Yeah.
Remember.
Yeah, well, this episode was done on like the fly, so I knew that Lloyd wouldn't have it in front of him. Yeah, it's at Pint _ comics. That's it. So check us out there. 160 plus episodes of Pint goodness for you. Lots of great guests like these guys. But let's talk about these guys real quick before we go. Your shows and where can everybody find all of the good Forgotten Entertainment stuff?
First off, we have yet another MCU podcast. That's the one Mike and I do together. We take a deep dive into each film in the MCU canon, going film by film, looking at how they connect within the MCU, and also, most importantly, probably checking out the comic book inspirations for the film. So you can find us wherever you get your podcast. You can download it, subscribe to it, review, rate it, please. But find us on Instagram, yet another MCU podcast, and then we're also on Twitter, sort of, MCU yet.
Sort of.
And then you can find us at forgottenentertainment.com/yet another MCU podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, where you can also find Forgotten Cinema, which is another podcast to do with Butler. He's got two others, but I'm not pimping them. So we take a movie every week that we think is forgotten for a variety of reasons, and we just banter back and forth. We do videos every Thursday. And and we're part of the Forgotten Entertainment family, and we're really excited that John and Lloyd are going to be doing some stuff with us. We're really looking forward to that, so that should be cool.
Awesome! It's going to be a great time.
Good stuff.
Now, Lloyd, this being a very special, somber, sad episode of Pint of Comics, you know the two words that we say at the end of every episode, but why don't you say them as if you were saying them to the movie theaters on their possible way out?
See ya.
See ya.